Hey guys, welcome back to LandonProduction. Today we're going to do top 10 facts. Today we have the top 10 children who are raised by animals. But before we get into this list, I first want to know, what is your favorite animal? Let me know down below. Alright guys, so get ready for this video. Today we're going to learn about some animals who like to take in children as their own. Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have Natasha Mikoova. This little girl was actually raised by dogs up until the age of 5 years old, which is the age she was when she was rescued from a filthy apartment where she lived with these dogs. While in the apartment, it was apparent she had little to no physical contact with other people, because once she was found, she showed mostly animal-like behavior. She didn't behave like a little girl at all. Instead, she was walking on all fours and she would bark to communicate, drink and eat like a dog, and groomed herself the same way a dog would by licking her skin. Before she was rescued by police, she had never been outside. The only place she knew was that small, dirty apartment. And at number 9, we have the Syrian Gazelle boy. At the age of 10, this young boy was found in the Syrian desert amongst a herd of gazelles. He was eventually captured by being hit by an Iraqi army jeep. Now you might be wondering, why did the men not simply get out of the jeep and chase after him? Well, the reason for this is because they would never be able to catch him. This kid was able to run 50 kilometers per hour thanks to his lean physique and crazy muscle power. He survived in the desert by taking handouts from the native people. Once captured, the boy made several attempts to escape the unpleasant state institution where he was being held, but he never successfully escaped, and he became a media sensation. But at this point, there were so many stories about him over the years that no one really knows what happened to him after all of this, or why he was even living in the desert to begin with. Moving into number 8, we have Sidi Mohammed, also known as the Ostrich Boy, and as you guessed, he was raised among ostriches. From what he remembers from the age of 5 or 6, for some reason, he wandered away from his North African family. I'm pretty sure it was because he was a young, adventurous kid, because let's be honest, at that age, you're not really scared of much. Early into his journey, he came across an ostrich nest. And he stumbled upon this nest at the perfect time because the chicks had just began to hatch, and I assume the parent ostriches didn't view him as a threat because they befriended him and let him into the nest, basically taking him in as one of their own. They fed him and taught him to run fast just like they did for their chicks. However, at the age of 12, he was taken back home after he was found by a group of ostrich hunters. He later went on to get married and have children. So surprisingly, in this case, the child turned out alright. Unfortunately, most of the other stories on this list, the other children, they didn't get so lucky. Coming in at number 7, we have Saturday Mithyan. This little boy was living among the monkeys in South Africa in the 1980s for one whole year until he was found at the age of 5. Even though he was found at 5 years old, later in 2005 he was still behaving like a monkey at the age of 17. He never learned how to talk or communicate properly. He never played with other children, he never walked upright, and he did not eat any type of cooked food. He was only at complete peace when he was around monkeys, and he was still able to connect with them so many years later. And at number 6, we have Daniel and the goats. This young man was living in the wild for 8 years with his friends the goats. He was with them for so long that he actually was able to communicate with them, and his feet even began to harden and adapt to help him walk on the rocky mountainsides. He was able to survive all of those years on just goat milk and whatever bits of edible plant he could find. He was found in 1990 at the age of 12 in Peru, living in the Andes with his goat family. When he was found, even though he couldn't speak, it was clear that he was under the impression that these goats were his parents. Moving into number 5, we're going to learn about Orangutan Boy. This boy was living with a group of orangutans when he was captured by Malaysian authorities. And these orangutans, they made it clear that they considered him one of their own. So when the authorities tried to take this boy from the orangutans, they put up a big struggle. However, once he was successfully captured, the men soon realized he was afraid of humans, and he refused to speak to them. Because of this, nothing about his personal life is known, including his name, age, or where he is originally from. The only thing they do know about this boy is that he was in pretty good health when he was found, and through observation they could tell that he had in fact lived with the animals for most of his life. And this was made clear because he adapted their way of eating, communicating, and moving. And they could tell by the way the orangutans were so affectionate towards him and protective of him that they must have in their minds adopted him several years prior to him being found. Coming in at our number 4 spot, we have Oksana, also known as the Ukrainian dog girl. Oksana had an extremely rough childhood with abusive and neglectful parents who would trap her in a kennel with her pet dog from the ages of 3 to 8. It finally came to an end in 1991 when the police found her, although the damage, sadly, it was already done. Oksana refused to talk, she would only respond with barks, and she would insist on walking around on all fours. The police were forced to place her in a mental institution. She is now able to verbally communicate. However, she does have issues with concentrating, learning new things, and remembering. So moving on to number 3, we have Andrew Tulski, and I'm gonna be honest, this is one of the saddest stories on the list. So this is about a little boy who was raised by a guard dog after his parents abandoned him at 3 months old in a deserted area of Siberia. Well, the reason his parents abandoned him was because he was born with hearing and speaking disabilities. That's just awful. Who abandons their child because it's not the perfect child? While living with the dogs, he adapted to their behavior, such as eating and drinking like a dog. He did not get along with people whatsoever. When he was around them, he acted erratically. Once he was eventually taken into town by the authorities, he was 7 years old and very hostile. It took him 2 weeks to learn how to walk on 2 legs again. In at number 2, we're going to learn about Lyoko the Wolf Boy. Lyoko was dubbed the Wolf Boy or Werewolf Boy by Moscow because he was found running and living with the wolves in a Russian forest. He was brought into the hospital when he was 10 by Russian authorities, who found him living in a lair made out of sticks and leaves in a location that was fairly close to Moscow. He was unable to speak any Russian and he acted exactly like a wolf. Not to mention the fact that he ate like a wild animal with his unusually sharp teeth. Once in the hospitals, doctors gave him a shower and cut his nails, but within 24 hours he escaped before doctors could perform any medical analysis. But they did note that he was temperamental, violent, and very strong. And still, to this day, no one knows where he is. So the child that's taking our number 1 spot might sound pretty familiar to all of you Disney fans out there. In our number 1 spot, we have Tippy Benjamin O'Canty Degree. Okay, so now we all know the Disney movie The Jungle Book, right? And in it, there's this little boy named Mowgli who's raised by wolves. Well, this story was related to the real life story of a little girl named Tippy. This little girl spent her first 10 years of her life in the African bush. Now, unlike other children on this list, Tippy was actually not abandoned. She lived with her wildlife photography parents. And the 3 of them traveled extensively throughout Africa. Even though she was living with her parents, they say she was basically raised by the animals and spent most of her days making sure monkeys didn't steal her bottles. She had so much freedom seeing as they lived in a tent in the wild, and she would spend more time with the animals than she did her own parents. Tippy was able to form strong bonds with some of the most dangerous animals because they were so used to being around her. She's now 25, she lives in France, and is finishing her degree in cinema. 2 years ago, she wrote a book called Tippy, My Book of Africa, and it was published worldwide. Alright guys, there we have it, our top 10 list of children who were raised by animals. Let me know down in the comments which one you found most bizarre, and also let me know which top 10 list you would want to hear about next. I love reading all of your guys' cool suggestions, so let me know, and I will see you guys next time. So make sure you guys like, subscribe for more cool videos you can check out right over here, and you guys can follow me on Instagram at Court McGinley. Bye guys!